crosstalk, meaning we don't interrupt or directly comment on John's sharing during this meeting. So at this time, let's enthusiastically welcome John.
John Addict. March 28th, 1988. Go through a real quick drug-a-log. I weighed about 100 pounds that day. I was still the same height. My eyes were sunk in and bulged out at the same time. We know that look. And my clothes were falling off of me. And my belt, I had to take a nail and a hammer and make like 4 more holes in my belt. And I had long hair, and I looked like Howard Stern on crack. Anyways, by the time I was 22, I'd already done a whole bunch of time in prison, right out of high school. And because I like to sell dope, but I did more than I sold. And anyways, they came and got me. I had like 4 study halls in high school. In my sophomore year, I was 18. And because I was held back in 8th grade, which is the year I discovered black hash. And that shit was good. Anyways, so I flunked 8th grade, so then, I was always like, never belonged, never felt like I belonged. Anybody feel like that? Yeah. Anyways. And so I always did outrageous shit to get noticed, like try to do the most, try to outdo everybody. And I was the kind of guy, like, I'd go to the beer parties and stuff, and everybody would be talking and socializing and shit, and I'm in a snowbank throwing up, because that's how I drank till I threw up. And some of the really good weed, I think, made me sick, but I don't know what it was. But I drank every night until I threw up. And even if I didn't, and I made it home into my bed, I still threw up, and because that's just, I don't know, my body was trying to protect me or something. But anyways, so go back to this last time was they came and got me out of high school, and I went right to jail, man. I didn't come out for 30 months. And so, 18, I was 21, and then I turned 22, and it's like, turned 22 in prison, how's that go? And it sucked, it sucked in there. There wasn't real girls in there, and I liked the real girls. I'm sorry. Not that there's anything wrong with that. But so I get out, and you'd think that I wouldn't use again, but I did. And then I went ahead and I hit my bottom real quick because I was shooting cocaine, and meth was like free. I don't know how much you guys paid for it recently, but it was free back then. It was like hors d'oeuvres. We're waiting for the guy to get cocaine. He was like 4 hours out, right? He's 4 hours out with my money, And so we're in the dope house, and they got boxes of meth, and they're, here, have some of this, Put that in the syringe, you know what I mean? And the hair in the back of your neck is, and you can't shut up, and, they have a program for people who talk too much. It's called On and On and On. And anyways, just threw that in there. Yeah, so I was shooting meth and coke, and the heroin girl came around, and coke and heroin, and That's good shit, you know. She never came back. If she'd have came back, I don't know if I would have got sober, you know, because that shit was really good. Hats off to you guys that can do a whole bunch of heroin and get sober. You know, that's a tough one. And the fentanyl, you know. Hats off to you if you can go a day sober. My withdrawal was mental. I didn't have a cocaine withdrawal. I mean, I ate some food after a week, you know, and I remember my buddy come to pick me up in O'Hare Airport in Chicago because I had to leave here to get sober. And so him and my oldest daughter's mom, I had been with her for like 6 years, you know, and she was pregnant, you know, and so back then you could go right to the exit, you know, the jetway, right? You could go right to the door and pick up your people. And I was the last guy off the plane, and that's a whole nother story why I was the last guy off the plane. But so I come walking up to him, right? 100 pounds, you know, long hair, sucked in, and they're going like this. They're like, and I can hear him talking. I think the fucker got off in Vegas, you know. And I'm like, I'm right here. And they're like, whoa. They didn't recognize me, my people, you know. My buddy, I grew up with him. He's the one who sent me a ticket, saved my life, you know, because I had to leave to get sober. I could not. I lived in the South Mountain Point, and I couldn't. I was supposed to be in Buckeye, working with my dad, and the car, the truck, or the bike would just turn down Broadway. I'm supposed to go that way, you know, and it would just turn on its own. And I'd say, well, I'll just get some to go, right? I'll just get some, bring it with me, you know. Nah, 3 months later, you know, I'm 100 pounds. Anyways, that's how that went. And so I go back to Wisconsin, right? They pick me up. We go to Lake Forest Oasis. There's a Wendy's, man. I remember eating that hamburger at Wendy's, and that was like the first solid food in like, I don't know, 6 weeks maybe. And I used to get my vitamin C from vodka and orange, you know. And anyways, so I'm eating this hamburger. I'm watching the trucks go under because it's on an overpass, right? And I remember that. It's like, wow, this is the first time I ate in a long time, you know. And I go back, and I had to transfer my probation down here, you know. It was a big deal. I was sober almost 2 years, and I had to transfer. And so now I'm going back. I didn't even tell anybody, you know. I'm just like, I had to go back. And my buddy that sent me the ticket, it was like a midnight flight, and I'm like getting high right to 11 o'clock, you know, 11:30. And I had some in my sock. I had a spoon and the water and shit, and I was going to bring it on the plane, you know, all that. And anyway, so I go home, and I'm like, Dad, I need to ride to the airport, you know. And he's holding up this an empty box of syringes, because he's a diabetic, you know, and he can't figure out why it's empty, you know. And then he's giving me this look of disgust, of helplessness, anger, you know. And I'll never forget that look, how it drove right into me, you know, that I made that happen, you know. And he's like, where are all my syringes? Man, I know what you're doing, blah, 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 blah. I talked to these people, and on the table is a folder from the Betty Ford Clinic, right? And I'm like, no, man, I'm just going to go back to Wisconsin. I'll get sober, man. I got this. It's all good. Don't worry. You know, just bring me to the airport, right? So I grab my shit. We make it to the gate in like 5 minutes to spare, you know. And I went back. And I shook on the plane a little bit, and I drank like 7 of them little bottles of liquor, you know. and it made me like normal, you know. I'm not really. I wasn't a big hard liquor drinker, but on that plane, man, that shit helped, you know. If you're shooting cocaine for 3 months, I recommend drinking. It helped. Fuck Suboxone, you know. Anyways, so I go back and I went to the Alano Club downtown, and people saw me, and they remembered what I looked like, you know, and they're like, man, dude, you know, they're looking at me, wow, it's serious, huh? You know, it's like, yeah, it was serious. And we say in AA and CMA, we say we come back with arrows in our ass, you know, like you're out in the jungle, man, and you get shot with a bunch of arrows, and you come back with arrows in your back. And that's how I came back. And anyways, so then I go see the PO, and because I'm like, hey, I'm back, right? It's like I transferred to Arizona, but I'm back here in Wisconsin. Did you miss me? And she was like talking all calm and nice in the beginning, you know, until I could hear the radio squawk in the back hallway and the keys jingling. You know what I mean? It's like, you know, and it's like, oh shit, here come the cops, you know, because that's how they did it. You went to your PO, and then the cops would come in, they'd cuff you, and you go out the back door, you know. And so here come the cops, and then she starts, you know, what have you been doing? Let me roll up your sleeves, you know, and all this shit. And I guess my sister talked to her, you know, and you know, because of course my dad talked to my sister, and my sister talked to my PO, and I'm like, man, you snitched on me, you know, I'll hate you forever. And anyways, but what she did is save my life, because I was going to come back here and do it my way. See, I was like, I got this. I'm going to do it my way. That would have never worked, because the first 3 weeks I was in jail, I was climbing the fucking walls in my head. I wasn't having physical withdrawals, but I was going fucking nuts, and I was obsessed. I was absolutely obsessed. I couldn't stop thinking about it. I couldn't stop talking about it. The guys in my cell were like, hey man, shut up about that shit, you know. You're making me Jones, and I never even shot cocaine, you know. And anyways, so yeah, if I wouldn't have been locked up, I would have found some dope. I'd have found it, because I was obsessed, you know. And so then this lady comes, right, PO, and she's like, hey man, you're gonna go do your time, you know. And I'm like, all right, you know, whatever. But then I go, well, what about Weybridge House, you know? She goes, no, you already went to Weybridge House. It was a 90-day spin dry, right? And I go, what about Midway? You know, she goes, oh, you already went to Midway too. And these are all the 90-day programs, right? I'm a veteran. I'm going to go coast through a 90-day program, right? Because I want it the easier, softer way. And then something come over me, because I'm like, man, those are the only two places in town, right? It's not like Prescott got 100 of them. You know, they're making millions off of your suffering, just so you know. Anyways, and so out of my mouth comes, well, what about Meridian House? And I knew about Meridian House. Meridian House was a therapeutic community. It was a boot camp. It was a 2.5-year program. It could go that long, you know. And I knew people that worked there, you know, right? I'm in my community. These are my friends that work there, and, you know, and I couldn't believe I said it either, you know. And then, so the PO's like, well, I don't know if they'll take you. Well, I'll go see. And she leaves. I go back to my cell, right? And I'm like, fuck, I'm going back, you know. And then this little lady shows up, and her name was Linda, and she had 17 years on that day. Not that day, but during that time of her life. And And she comes in and she's asking me, hey, why do you want to come in here? I'm like, well, I can go do my time, but I'm still going to come out. I'm going to be a junkie, and I need to do something different, So I must have said the key words or whatever, that they're looking for. And I wasn't trying either. I'm just like, yeah, I got nothing else to lose, man, It's like prison, treatment, And I had a baby on the way, a couple months away. And so I'm like, yeah, I don't want to go to prison. Got a kid coming, blah, blah, blah. And then she goes, okay, well, we'll see. And then she goes, well, do you have any special requests, any special diet or anything, And I'm like, no, I'm good, with food, whatever kind, you know what I mean? And she says, well, what about, anything else? I said, well, put me with the white guys, you know what I mean? Like we're classifying me for prison, right? And it's like, I don't really get along with the black guys, man. So just put me with the white guys, right? And then she goes, well, anything else, And I was like, yeah, and I don't want to cook in no kitchens either, I've done cooked already, I've done that most of my adult life, right? All of a year or two. And then I said, and don't put me with no fags either. I don't play that way, you know what I mean? And so she's writing shit down with a straight face, right? Imagine some lady who's a counselor, an accomplished counselor with 17 years sober, is listening to me with my entitled list, right? And with a straight face, And so she's writing shit down, I'm like, cool, man, I'm gonna get what I want here. I like this place already. And so I go there, and they room me with a gay black guy, and he was my boss in the kitchen. So that's how my sobriety went, And I was in that place for 9 months. And I remember there was a plaque on the wall. The place had been open about 20 years. And there was a plaque on the wall with like 13 graduates, out of 20 years. And I'd look at it and I'd say, I'm going to be one of them graduates, man, And I just decided that, see? You have to just decide what you're going to do and then do it. And so I started to get what they were doing, bunch of mind games and stuff, and they made you wear signs. They made you yell at yourself in the mirror. They made you walk through the place saying different stuff, whatever was on your sign, Me and this guy, Jack, we were painting the place, right? Because they made you work and shit if you were there. And we were like throwing karate kicks at each other, right? And so one of the staff comes in and they'd make you stand on a line 8 feet away, at attention, and then they would come and like yell shit at you, It's like, John, you were throwing karate kicks outside, and you're not the Karate Kid, and so my sign was, I'm not the Karate Kid. I need to respect the rules of Meridian House in order to rebuild my life. And it was on this sign, I remember it, like it was yesterday. And we had to make our own signs. And my girlfriend at the time came to a picnic, and I had a pair of sunglasses on my head, and I came walking in with them, and like, you're supposed to have sunglasses privileges, And so they made a big deal out of it, right? To me, it's like, it's no big deal. Oh, I just forgot, man, sorry. And so I had to wear these 2-foot sunglasses, right? Made them with plastic wrap, lenses and shit, and I got real creative with it. And you weren't allowed to laugh at anyone's. It was called an LE, a learning experience, not law enforcement, learning experience. And you weren't allowed to laugh at anyone's LE. And And so this guy Tracy, man, we used to joke around a lot, and he was in there because he huffed gas, you know, and anyway, so we used to give him a lot of shit because we called him Huffer, Puffer, all kinds of gas names and shit, you know, and you're not supposed to do that. But anyway, so I come out and I got this shit-eating grin, and I knew he'd laugh. As soon as he laughed, like 6 people wrote a slip on him, right? You had to write slips. And you had to, like, snitch, you know. It's foreign. But instead it's holding people accountable, you know. And so 6 people wrote a slip on him. He come out, he's got to wear the same glasses, you know. And then we had so much fun, they made me wear a suit and tie and carry a briefcase, you know, because I wasn't taking it serious, you know. So I'm walking around there, you know, briefcase, suit and tie, my sign that says I'm not the Karate Kid. I need to respect the rules of Meridian House in order to rebuild my life. And then we all had these. If you didn't write enough slips, you got in trouble. They're like, oh, you guys are all keeping secrets, right? And so we had to make these halos, right? Because we're all angels, right? So the whole house is wearing these halos, you know, and I got my sign and my suit, and you know, and then they made me carry buckets of bricks, and I was like, oh, this is cool, man. I'm working out and shit, you know. I'm like, this is great. Each one of them bricks was my character defects, right? And so I had to do like a workbook on each one, you know. And then they would take that brick out, and then I'd be like, you know, one's lighter than the other one, you know. And it was kind of weird, but you could feel the weight of it or something. I don't know what you were supposed to learn by it, but I didn't learn a goddamn thing. So some guy was drunk driving and crashed into the back of the building, right? And, you know, we're sitting there all of a sudden, you know, the building shakes and the lights are shaking, all this shit. And so we all go running out there. You're not supposed to go outside, by the way. And so we all go running out there wearing our halos and shit, you know. And this guy that's intoxicated rolls out of his car, you know. He's looking at us going, did I die? And then it was just like a laugh fest, you know what I mean? And he's laughing, we're laughing, the cops come, you know. It's like, yeah, that was funny. One guy hung himself in there. Another girl cut her wrists, you know. It's fucked up shit. The fear of sobriety, right? Why the hell would you do that? You know, I want to stick around and see what happens. You know, that's all. Who hasn't had that thought, right? And so then I always would say, well, we'll stick around and see what happens. You know, I've had that happen in sobriety too. You know, it's untreated alcoholism, untreated addiction, and so I get out of Meridian House. I graduated from there, by the way. And I still have the medallion. And Linda's still my friend today, my counselor, 34 years later. My PO is still my friend today, 34 years later. And at my son's funeral, them girls were on each side of me, holding me up. Anyways, so the sobriety thing, man, I did everything the hard way, right? Couldn't just have somebody say, John, man, watch out for this, and this. You know, I'm like, nah, that ain't gonna affect me that way. You know, I can do whatever I want, right? This is cool until you start telling me what to do, you know. And so I went to this Alano club, and there were these old guys. They were kind of ornery, you know. And it was a club, right? It was a separate business. It was an Alano club, but it was It was a separate business that ran it, and they had rules and shit, and I got kicked out, and they'd make you they'd say, John, we need to talk to you and your sponsor, right? So I'd have to go get my sponsor, and he's like my lawyer, and we go in the back room, and they're like, there's, two guys there, George and Dave Connolly. I remember them like it was yesterday, and they're both dead now. But anyways, so they're like, John, your two girlfriends were fighting downstairs at the Alano Club yesterday, so we're kicking you out of here. I'm like, I wasn't even here, And anyway, so they kicked me out for 30 days. And I was like, well, I'll show them. I stay gone for 60 days. And anyways. And so I lived with this sober motorcycle club called the Outcasts, Kenosha, Wisconsin. And anyways, they helped me grow up. I was a punk ass kid, and they helped me grow up. And I was around a bunch of men that were sober. Like most of them had, 18, 20 years sober, and so I got in tight with them, And then eventually I moved into their house, and I didn't prospect or anything, but I was like the house guy, man. At one point, and I wasn't like enrolled in any other program or anything, but they had me on a girl band, and so we had a meeting at the clubhouse on Wednesday night, and that was my night to clean. And so the clubhouse was spotless, and my room was clean, and the outside was spotless, and so I just kind of hung around the house, and I wasn't allowed to talk to no girls at the Alano Club anywhere. There needed to be another outcast with me, and I followed along. Like I was like, yeah, all right, and anyways, and in that time I did a fourth and fifth step, and then I did another one, and like 6 months went by, man, and I'd be asking my sponsor, like, hey, man, it's been a while, man, what's up, and he'd say, well, I'll let you know. And after about 6 months, I stopped asking him, and then like right after that, they're like, all right, you're good to go, and then I still waited, a little bit after that, and I suggest everybody do that, focus on yourself, man. Unbelievable what you'll find, And anyways, I lived with them guys, and we started an Alano Club, another one, because we didn't like the rules of the first one, right? And it was too cliquish, right? It's so easy to say that. Oh, it's too many cliques, man. If you're looking for holes in this thing, man, you'll find them. There's a lot of inconsistent people. There's a lot of inconsistencies. If you're looking for it, you'll find it. But the old school, man, book that I went through, they say we're supposed to look for the similarities. And if you don't, because our brains aren't wired to get what I'm saying with 34 years. I'm talking foreign language to most of you. And our brains aren't wired to hear it, They're like, whatever, man, whatever, And so in the beginning, man, I didn't hear it, And I had to go do everything the hard way, everything that they suggest, Don't get in a relationship in your first year, It's not in the book anywhere. But it does say, don't make any major decisions, okay? When I'm not in a relationship, I don't have any character defects whatsoever, But when I'm in one, I have all kinds of them. See, if you want to see what character defects you do have, get in a relationship. Move to Minneapolis, in her mom's basement, because you're going to work at Taco Bell. And see what kind of character defects you have when you're struggling for money and trying to fucking pay the bills and stay sober, you know. Usually what happens, one of them gets high, one of them goes to prison, one of them comes back with arrows in their ass and tells us the story, you know. And it's not always the case, you know. It's not, this shit ain't in stone, so let's not go there. It's not in stone. I tell my sponsees, don't do it unless you absolutely have to. So there's a clause, you know. Sometimes you just have to, you know. Anyways, and but as a rule, man, at least you know what you're getting into, you know, because you've been warned. Anyways. I had 5 kids. I have 4 now, and I had 5 kids with 5 different baby mamas, because that's what you do when you're sober, right? I got married 3 times and divorced, and out of my last divorce, I got sole custody of my daughter. She's over there. Raise your hand, Jade. Anyways, keep an eye on her. Don't loan her any money. Love you, Jade. Anyways, and so I'm all of a sudden, you know, you go to court, right? And if you go to court, you want to come out the winner, right? That's the idea. At least win in court. And so all of a sudden, you know, I got this little girl, and I was like, wow, I didn't think that was going to happen, you know. But I was sober, and the mom wasn't, and she just didn't show up. She didn't even show up, right? And anyways, so that's what I did for the next, 17, 18 years. And, you know, I had to have some stability. I had to have a house. I couldn't live at the clubhouse in Mesa, you know, so I had to have a house. I couldn't live with my buddies out on Sossaman, you know, and they were tweaking, you know. That was bad. And so I moved in with this girl and her mom, and we lived in the Biltmore, you know, and it was a good, solid, safe place to live, and guard gate and all that shit. Lived on the golf course, and it was cool. And we did that for like 5-6 years, and moved around a couple places, you know. Lived in Maryville, 59th and Thomas, right? I had a house there because that's the only house I could afford, you know. And I drove her like 45 minutes to school in a different neighborhood, obviously, and and it was all good. People helped. My dad helped, and I had to go to meetings where children were allowed. You know, that's why our CMA meeting is children are allowed. And we had to, in our business meetings, we had a lot of people in our business meetings when we were developing the format. We're like, kids, child molesters. You know, we had to choose between one or the other, right? Pretty easy choice. It's in our format. 2 people in like 18 years of that actually, you know, spoke out in defense of child molesters. You're not going to get any sympathy here, you know. I believe that a lot of people have that issue, you know. Somebody been touched by somebody shouldn't have been, you know, and they got high over it for 15 years, you know. And anyways, that's a serious issue. And yeah, so that's one of our things. But so my sponsor, I got this guy as a sponsor, and he was raising his nephew because his sister died of an overdose. So then he adopted his nephew, and then we raised our kids together. We ate dinner all the time. We hung out all the time. We went to meetings all the time. We hung out real tight. If I needed a car, he'd give me a car on credit. He used to flip cars, and we did that for about 18 years. And then somebody killed him that he was helping out, killed him for his money. And so what happens is usually when you get a sponsor, it's somebody older than you, or like a more of an adult figure, Don't get the guy that's the house manager that's got 3 months sober, because he don't know shit. That guy don't know shit. All you need is a pulse to work in treatment. Sorry if you work in treatment. Anyways, so we get these sponsor people that are older, right? We want somebody to walk us through the steps, right? Teach us how to do this shit. And it's usually an older person, I've outlived 3 sponsors, And so this sponsor I picked is a little younger. So maybe he'll stick around for a while, But this guy Lester was my first sponsor, and he had this big old scar on the side of his face, man. He had white hair and these fucking deep blue eyes, and he was all tatted out, He was vice president of the club, man, and I asked him to be my sponsor, But see, I knew the guy, right? I knew him before I even came to AA. And my uncle had a shoe repair shop, and I was the shoe shine boy at age 11. I started working, and I would shine people's shoes. And Meridian House was right next door, So I knew all these guys, man. They'd come in Friday night, and I'd shine their shoes and shit and bullshit with them, and Timmy wouldn't tip for shit, but Lester always gave me $1, man, so I remembered him. Shoe shine was 26 cents, and they'd say keep the change from $1. I was like, cool, And then I got 12.5 cents for each shine that I punched this old register, And that was good because I learned to deal with people, at an early age, and I wasn't afraid of people. I could talk to anybody, I've shined movie stars' shoes, because I was right between Milwaukee and Chicago, and I could belt off all the names. But anyways, so when I ended up in Midway, they brought us to the Alamo Club, and I come down there, and here's all the outcasts, and they're all sitting there going, hey, man, we know you. Come over here. And that was cool because at least I knew people. I didn't go in there like, I don't know anybody, And that's how I got hooked up with those guys, and I already knew them all, And so when I moved into their clubhouse, they helped me get a motorcycle, right? And if you're a guy or even a girl, and you're new in recovery, and if you can save up enough money to get a Harley Davidson, I highly recommend it. It'll change your life. And it did mine, They helped me get a Panhead, 49 Pan, and I knew the guy that owned it, and he got a new bike, and so they let me make payments, and then they let me ride it too while I was making the payments, and it was cool. It had drag bars and a hinged rear fender. It was all the same in the back, and it had these little short pipes, and they were loud as hell. And it was a kicker. You had to kickstart it. You had to retard the timing. You had to turn the timing thing back to kick it half a time, and then turn it forward, and then kick it. Then you had to kick it back to the middle once it got running. And so it wasn't really a beginner's bike, but at least it had a clutch and a foot shift. If it had a jockey shift and a foot clutch, I probably wouldn't have figured it out, But it was cool, and they helped me, when it broke down, they helped me fix it, and, if I owed money for the parts, they'd let me pay it, And they rode everywhere. They rode to Florida like 4 times a year, you know. We'd leave in October, and we'd be going through Illinois, and it'd be like this much snow on the ground. But we're going to Daytona, you know, because there was a clubhouse down there, and I had a key to it, you know. And so we'd be driving through Illinois, right? Illinois sucks, anyways. Nothing good ever came from Illinois, right? Anyways, and so we're riding through Illinois. We got our feet down in the snow, right, to stay up. And then you get to like Cairo, you cross the Mississippi, and then all of a sudden you're in the South, you know. The snow would end right there, and it was a hardtail, right? So it means there's no shocks on the back, you know, and and it beat you up, but it got me there, you know, got me there and back, you know, a whole bunch of times. We rode to the 1990. We rode to Seattle to the World Convention, you know, and I got to ride all over with these guys. We'd go to Dayton, Ohio. We went to Founders Day in Akron. Got to see where Bill W. was, you know, where Dr. Bob's house and all that shit. AA history, you know. By the way, CMA uses the AA book, you know. So it was. I grew up in AA. We had NA in my town, but like they didn't pay the rent, and we'd go there, and it was in this crappy hotel, right? And you had to go up a fire escape, and then you go in there, and there's a note on the door, man. You didn't pay the rent, you know, so you guys can't be here, you know. I was like, shit, that was NA in Kenosha, Wisconsin, you know. Anyways, and so, you know, I didn't really have that. And so then my sponsor said, you just have to substitute the words for yourself. You know what I mean? And, you know, I'm like, man, I shot cocaine. I can't relate to this old guy, you know. And, you know, my nose burned through, you know, from meth and shit. And he was like, I can't relate to these old guys. Oh, I spilled more than you drank, you know. They'd say shit like that back then. And I'd say, well, I didn't waste none of mine, motherfucker, you know. I didn't spill a drop. That shit's expensive, you know. I drank Miller and other people's Miller. Anyways, so I stayed there until I was about 28, and I don't know, I think I had 6 years sober, and then I moved up to Door County, Wisconsin, which is like, you know, if you're from Wisconsin, right, it's right there on the thumb, and had a farm there and shit, and that was my serenity, you know. If I never had to leave that place, I would have been fine. But I had to drive to Green Bay to work in a paper mill. I was a millwright, and I couldn't get any work at the Carpenters Union in Green Bay, so I ended up working as a millwright. And it was pretty cool. But I drove an hour each way, and it was like 45 minutes unless there was tourists. Right, because it's a tourist place, right? It's like trying to get through Sedona on a Sunday, you know? And it was really irritating. And I got through there faster in my tractor, you know, because you could ride on the side, you know? And anyways, I really liked that. I loved living there. And my dad's like, hey, come on down here, man. We struck it rich, you know? He sold me on that shit, right? He was a bullshitter, man. That's like, I had to like swear to myself that I wouldn't be like my dad like that. He was a compulsive liar, you know. He would lie when the truth was a better bet, you know. And so we never knew really what the real stories were about history of anything, you know. He had all these stories. And anyway, so I come down here then, and, you know, this time I'm sober, you know. This time I got sobriety, you know. And the difference was the last time I did the geographical cure, it was to get away from something, right? I'm like, I don't want to be no dad, man, you know, right? So I'm running, and it didn't work. See, this time, it's like, well, I'm 6 years sober, right? I had accomplished some shit, right? And made some money. I had a roofing company, made a bunch of money. And the worst thing you can do to an addict in early recovery is give them a bunch of money, you know? And that's what we think. I just need to make more money. I just need to buy this. I just need that, this and that. And it's not what you need, you know? It's what you want, right? And the difference is, what I want is I want to be able to sit on a white sand beach with a drink with an umbrella on it and drink sociably. And then I want to maybe shoot cocaine sociably, you know? And if I get tired, I want to do a little meth sociably. And if I get too strung out, I'll maybe do some heroin, you know? And so there's none of that, right? And make a long story short, is it? All right. I talked too long. I was going to let other people talk, but I talked too long. All right. We'll eat cake right after. Yeah. Let's eat some cake. Thanks for coming, helping me celebrating my 34 years.